we're going to talk about deploying Vault Basic 2023. So on the agenda today, we have, first of all, why should you deploy Vault Basic or Vault in general? What the benefits are, how do you get access to it? How do you know if you have access to it? Requirements on the server, and then certain tips. I've been around Vault for a number of years now, so I've run into certain hiccups, certain areas that help us, that have slowed down or stopped an installation. So how to get around those and some of those tips to do that. So start off with the benefits of Vault. Why should you be using Vault? Why should all of our manufacturing AEC customers be using Vault? And one of the first things that you see or benefit from in Vault, excuse me, is checking in and out. And what that means is it's the reservation system that Vault has to ensure that only one user at a time is modifying a file, and nobody is overwriting each other at the same time. It allows you to also know that you're working on the latest and greatest version of a certain file. It allows us to keep track of history of your designs and as they go. So when you do a check-in and check-out, it tracks who made the changes, when they made the changes, and it also allows you to keep track of the metadata. So a lot of our customers, when we do Vault implementations or when they implement Vault themselves, a lot of the questions they end up asking are, what information is important to me? Who's going to consume this information? Who's going to generate this information? And then how do we get all this information to each other in the most efficient way? So metadata is one of those ways. Certain properties, if you're working with automobiles, like what model are you working for? What manufacturer? What trim? All this information could be important to certain users that you're going to share this information with, or it could be important to manufacturing. What gauge of sheet metal is it going to be? Which machine on the CNC is it going to be CNC'd? All this is information that can be captured in Inventor as custom properties, but can also be translated into Vault and mapped to make sure that it always stays consistent. You can always make sure that if the source of truth is the file, when it gets modified on the Vault, or sorry, on the CAD side, you fill out a form, you fill out certain properties. If that's the source of truth, you can make sure that Vault reads those properties and makes them available. Once they're in Vault, let's say you have a new hire and they're not familiar with the structure of your folders or where to find certain files, that information that you've been capturing becomes searchable. They can use it to find the files within the environment of Vault. And the more information that you provide about your files, the easier it is to find them within the Vault. And then one of the other benefits that you can get is standardization. One of the things we've been talking about recently with the data management team and such is the importance of a CAD manager, setting your standards, making sure that everybody's working in the same manner, right? You can have SOPs, you can have standard operating procedures, but ensuring that everybody's following is a different thing. You have to make sure somebody is taking care of that and ensuring that everything is the same. And that's where your templates and your design data, your styles and such, being consistent is important as well. So that's one of the things, a lot of our customers do is, they set up their templates, they set up their styles and design data and store it in Vault. You will know when someone makes changes to it. You will know who it did, who made those changes, and you're actually able to revert back to a previous version if it's something that wasn't allowed or wasn't supposed to happen. Same thing with your designs, because of that history that you're creating of your designs as it changes. If you go too far in one direction and you want to pull it back to a previous version, that's something that Vault allows you to do without having to worry about storing that offsite, kind of keeping track of it and eventually maybe forgetting about it. And now you're just creating, that kind of complicated folder structure somewhere else. Vault does it all for you, and you're able to do that, through Vault Basic as well. So again, just to recap the benefits, checking in, checking out that reservation system that you have. History, very, very important. Keep track of your design as it moves forward. This is all with Vault Basic. Of course, Vault Professional will have some other functionality that you can have, but Vault Basic itself allows you to keep track of that history. Metadata and searchability. Like I said, what's important to you will be important to Vault. When you set it up that way, you can set it up to have specific properties in there mapped to your CAD data, and then keeping everything standard, templates, design data, making sure that all of that is moving along and staying consistent across everyone's Vault client. And of course, as we go through here, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A here. I'll be able to answer them either as we move forward or at the end of the session when we get to Q&A. Access to Vault Basic. Vault Basic is what Autodesk likes to call an entitlement. So depending on the type of software that you own through Autodesk, you'll have access to it. So we have a full list of Vault Basic entitlement. So Inventor Professional, 3ds Max, AutoCAD with specialized tools is the package, not the AutoCAD vanilla that you may have it as a license. It'll still work with AutoCAD vanilla, but the entitlement and the downloads and installation files themselves are available through the special when you purchase the specialized tools. The other way you'll have access to it is Product Design and Manufacturing Collection, PDMC users, AEC collections, and then the Media and Entertainment collections. This is something that you can access through your manage.autodesk.com portal. I'll go ahead and type that out in the chat. So through that website that I sent out in the chat, essentially you'll log in. You'll again need to make sure that you have one of these pieces of software assigned to you. If you are the contract manager or the or a secondary admin, you'll have access to the downloads through the account portal, but you'll be able to download the server end. For those of you that aren't familiar with Vault and how it works in general, as far as structure, there are two parts to Vault. One is the server end, which stores your files, similar to how you would think about a network drive. It's a location somewhere that stores your files for you. You will need one of those for to deploy Vault Basic. So moving on to our next slide here, you'll have certain requirements that you'll need to have in place before you can deploy it. A lot of our customers, depending on the size, will have its own separate machine. Again, a server that will host the files, will host the database that controls all of these files. So there are moving parts on the back end. If you do have access to the software and you're a smaller company, maybe it's two or three of you in the same area, it could be hosted on your own machine. That's one of the benefits of Vault Basic is you're able to kind of host it on your own machine and then have other users connect to it. There's benefits and risks with that. Again, like if you're not in the office and maybe you take your machine with you home, that makes the Vault unavailable to the other users. So typically you want to pick a machine that will be available to everyone in the office or through VPN when necessary, making the personal machine, the Vault kind of runs with its risks there. The requirements themselves, though, that you'll run into or that you'll need to adhere to for 2023 specifically, these are the numbers that we have for 2023. Like I mentioned, the Windows OS, typically for Vault Professional, and so for Vault Professional, you'll definitely need a server. A Windows Server OS. So you'll see that Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2019, are supported for Vault Basic, and they'll be supported for Vault Professional as well. And then the second two Windows OSs that we have here, Vault 10 Professional and 11 Professional, as well as Enterprise, those will only be supported for Vault Basic. So again, that's one of the benefits of Vault Basic. There is you're able to run it on non-server machines with non-server OSs. You can install it if you're working by yourself, but you still want to keep track of that history. You still want to keep track of that metadata. You can set up your own personal environment on your machine. As long as you're running Windows 10 or 11 Professional. It does not work on Windows Home. I've tried it and it kind of yells at you, letting you know that you're not in a supported OS. That's one of the things you'll run into when setting up the ADMS, or the data management server console that Vault uses. So you'll need to make sure that you have the right OS. SQL or SQL is a database program that Microsoft produces, Microsoft produces, and they're developing it every year, from year to year, the same way that they do with Windows OSs. So you'll see that there are certain SQL versions that are required for this 2016, 17, 19. The thing there is there are free versions and there are paid versions for SQL. The free version is called SQL Express. And the thing there is it has a limit of 10 gigabytes for maximum size of database, right? So if you're just starting out with Vault Basic and you're just, putting in files and starting to deploy it, you don't have to worry about that limit. One of the things that we do through our Vault data management support is, every quarter we make sure that, we look at the health of the server, make sure you're not getting, if you do have SQL Express, we make sure that you're not getting to that 10 gigabyte limit. If you are, we advise, purchase a standard license with good good amount of time for you to purchase that. Again, if you're just starting out, you don't have to worry about that limit. It's as you grow and as you start adding files that for extended period of time that you start getting towards that that limit. And then CPU and RAM, again, if you're running on your machine and you're using it for modeling, typically you'll meet these requirements as far as RAM and CPU, but recommended 3 gigahertz as far as the CPU speed. And then, and then RAM is 16 gigabytes recommended. These are starting out numbers. Again, Autodesk is assuming you're just starting out with Vault Basic and, you have nothing in place right now. You don't have, we have customers that are like 2.5 terabytes of data already, and they've been using Vaults for like over a decade and longer than that. So, obviously as the Vault gets bigger and the server requirements are increased with that as well to make sure that performance stays consistent. And then tips and tricks, right? So we've all, or if you haven't tried, maybe you have and you've run into issues and haven't been able to get through them. We've obviously worked with the customers and run into these snags, so we had to get through them on our end. So some of the things that we'll run into or recommend is installing IIS separately. Whenever you're starting off on a new machine, a new server, what have you, whatever environment you're working on, IIS typically isn't installed when you get it, and that includes your own personal machine. So IIS, think of it as a bridge that Vault uses to communicate between wherever the Vault server is hosted and wherever somebody is accessing it from. So it's that bridge. Again, it comes with Windows. It's just not installed or enabled. So you'll go through a kind of a process to install it separately. There is a link I will throw in chat at the very end here that goes through the options that are required for IIS as you're installing it. There are, different roles, different options that you have to select as you're installing it on the server. So keep an eye out for that link. Install SQL separately. As of 2023, the database name doesn't have to be Autodesk Vault. In previous years, you would have to make sure that it was named Autodesk Vault in order for Vault to be able to pick it up and see it. So as of the latest release, you can actually pick the name of the database that you want it to work with, but you can install it separately. These are two things that come with the Vault basic installation, the package. It'll go ahead and install those for you. But in my experience, installing these separately gives you more control over it, gives you more kind of a better situation that you might not encounter any errors when you're doing it. But of course, you will run into errors every once in a while, whether you're installing it for the first time, whether you're installing that server application, or whether you're doing an upgrade, right? Maybe you're already on Vault Basic and you're looking to move to the newer version of 2023. Some of the common errors that you get are reboot pending. So if you run the pre-checks before you install, or you try to install the data management console, you kind of pick these errors up before it starts the installation. Again, one of the benefits of doing all these checks and installations beforehand is, you kind of see all the errors that you might have to fix before you actually go into the process there. So reboot pending is one of the big ones. The reason I bring that up is because I've run into instances where I've rebooted the server 3 or 4 times, maybe even more, and it still does not go away, right? And what ends up happening there is sometimes there's a registry key in the back end that gets stuck. One of the suggestions, if you rebooted it 4 or 5 times, you can't get rid of this reboot pending. We've had to go into the registry to kind of delete the reboot pending key from there. Sometimes it just gets stuck. I know a lot of you might be a little uncomfortable doing that. Registry keys are, kind of a gray area or a murky area for a lot of people. So if you feel uncomfortable with that, or you have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to us at KETIV. We've done this many a time, and can definitely help with that. The other error that you'll get is IIS instance already exists. And what ends up happening with that is, this one specifically, if you're doing an upgrade already, what IIS ends up doing is it creates a shortcut. So this is my environment here. What it ends up doing is it creates a shortcut for the Autodesk data management portion. And you'll see that, it is a shortcut. It's not the native actual configuration of the IIS. And when Vault goes to do a pre-check, it sees that there, and it kind of doesn't want to move forward until it's gone. The solution for that one is actually to come in here and just remove that shortcut. And if you rerun the pre-checks, it'll take it away. I've been talking a lot about pre-checks and stuff, but again, if you're not familiar with the installation of the server, this one is Vault Professional. You'll see that here, but Vault Basic has the same functionalities as far as pre-checks and installation. But running pre-checks here will run through your system and kind of make sure that it's ready, right? This is the thing that I'm saying, run before you actually do the installation. Once you hit install, it requires, inputting some information and kind of pushing it through. You don't want to have to, go through all that work and then have it tell you things like this, like you need to reboot. Exactly what I was talking about. reboot needed. If I wanted to get rid of that, I would go into my registry and delete it. And then this Autodesk DM virtual directory, it found on my default website. And again, that is referring to this. If I were to remove that shortcut, which I'm not going to in my environment right now, it recreates. The reason for that is it recreates it when it installs again. So when you install the server, if you're doing an upgrade, it'll recreate that Autodesk DM. In my environment right now, if I delete it, it'll probably cause some connection issues in my vault. But if you're doing an upgrade, you'll be fine. It'll recreate the connection once it gets installed. But again, you want to go through these processes here to make sure that you get the 14 successful pre-checks before you move forward, and then it'll install without any issues. The reason you want to do this is if I install this here, it'll probably yell at me because I already have server installed. But once you hit install down here, it goes through the pre-checks anyway. So it's going to run that pre-check as it is. So even if you don't, I'm saying if you click through all this and it goes through, it starts doing the installation, it'll run the pre-check. So if you have any errors or anything to fix, they'll pop up anyway. So might as well do them beforehand. Might as well know about them before you actually start the installation. And that's pretty much what I had. Again, it's preparing yourself to deploy Vault Basic, what you'll need to know, and what you should look out for before you install. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Please type them in the chat. I do have one from Doug here. Can I install Vault Basic for non-CAD users without subscription account? No. So when you're installing Vault Client, it looks for one of those CAD entitlements or one of those software. So if you try to use it for non-CAD, it won't install without that CAD license enabled. It sounds like for non-CAD users, if you need them to do more of a read-only, or if you need them to do more of a just a viewer, one of the things that Vault Professional comes with is a thin client. That would be one of the benefits of using that. But yeah, for non-CAD users, it would be you wouldn't be able to install it and stay within. Also, the thing about entitlements is staying in compliance. So one of the things, during audits and such, if even if you're able to get it installed, some of us are tech savvy, some of us are know our way around a registry editor. Even if you're able to install it, if something happens during an audit and they're looking at the number of Vault Basic installations versus the number of entitlements that you have, that could cause some issues. So that's something you'll want to avoid. You'll want to make sure that you're within compliance there. Let's see. We can see any other questions here. Let's see. Do you have any space requirements for? Okay. So if you have, are there any space requirements for hard drives, right? So, if you're looking at space to host your files, typically we start around 300 gigabytes. I would say that's enough. When you're first uploading your files, you'll have to make a choice, right? Are you going to work with all your legacy data, all the things that are currently in your network, right? However you're dealing with your files, are you going to upload all of that into Vault Basic right away? That's a decision you'll have to make. How necessary is it to you at this time is usually the question that we ask. How often do you access it? How often do you modify it? So drawing that line in the sand, right? Do you want to just include new files into Vault, or do you want to bring all your old files? It really depends on the situation, but that will also dictate how large your hard drive should be on the machine that you're hosting it, right? if you're hosting it locally, again, one of the things to keep in mind is you'll basically have 2 copies of the files that you're working on hand. So something to keep in mind if you're looking to host it locally is keep an eye on your space to make sure that you do have enough space to host that. All right. It was very messy and difficult to retain older version of a part or assembly in 2020 version I was using. Is there any changes or updates on this Vault 2023 version? As far as retain, did you mean retain or obtain? Sorry. Kind of want to make sure there that we're looking at I'm answering the right question there. So as far as retaining, yeah, we can answer both. As far as retaining, it should retain all those files or all those versions for you automatically, and that means it'll keep track of them. So I'm going to go ahead and log into Vault here. The history function is exactly the same in Vault Basic as it is in Vault Professional. So if we're looking at a file, would help if I log into a Vault that has files in it, wouldn't it? All right, so let's find some Inventor files that we have here. So we're going to look at some of the standard models that come with Inventor that they give us for demos here. This one has one version. Let me see. So this one should have, yeah, this one has multiple versions. So it's able to keep track of these things, automatically. Every time you make a change to the properties, every time you make a change to the design through Inventor, it'll keep track of the date and time that it was created, as well as the person who did it. So it should be relatively clean, keeping track of that within Vault. And if you're talking about obtaining, one of the things that you'll have to do, let me see if I can find an assembly here with multiple versions, but yeah, so this one, it would just be a question of making sure that you are wiping the current. So if you're looking at the latest version of a jet engine model on your machine, you want to make sure that you clear out all those parts, and then download the older version that you're trying to look at, right? So, if I made any changes in these 20 minutes between these 2 versions that I have created here, you'll want to make sure that you clear out the latest ones, and then you'll do a get of the older one. So, and then make sure that you're grabbing all the children that are associated to it. And then if you want to really double check, you can kind of sort through these here, and you should be able to choose column here. Should be able to also choose the version that you're downloading. So, you'll know which version of each file you're downloading here. And then when you download it locally, go through the process here. It should let you know that it's an older version. You'll see this in Vault Basic, it'll be a red dot. In Vault Professional, it's 2 red arrows, but essentially it'll tell you have an older version of this file locally. So, when you open it up in Inventor, it'll reflect the state of the assembly that it was in when it was checked in at that time. So, if you are running into issues on 2020, and it's giving you a hard time there, reach out to us. We'll definitely be happy to help you. You don't need to. So the follow-up question here: do you need to delete the new version to retain older version? You don't have to. I like to do it as kind of like a best practices here, but you do have an option to overwrite. So working folders force overwrite. That's one of the options when you're downloading the file. By default, it'll say working folders. And then if you want to ensure it, you can force the overwrite here, and it'll it'll download over the files that are currently there. Again, I do it because, like you mentioned, there have been some cases where, it does act a little out of character when you're trying to open up an older one. I just find it easier to delete the newer version and download the older copy. The other thing I've seen is if Inventor is holding the newer assembly in memory, it'll open up that newer version anyway. So if you're running into issues, closing Inventor and clearing out that cache that Inventor holds for memory would be another thing to try. And just gonna hold out here a couple more minutes to see if you guys have any questions or any follow-up questions here. But yeah, so when you try to force that overwrite here, it'll tell you, hey, you're gonna overwrite the files locally. That one, I want to make sure that you guys are aware, because if you have made changes to files that you want to keep, that overwrite will take that right away and delete them. But let's add up here. I'm not seeing any other questions coming out. Like Christina said, there will be a survey. If you guys at the end of the webinar, if you guys have any suggestions or have any requests as to things that you want us to cover, whether even if they're not data management related, have a lot of talented engineers that can cover topics that are of interest. So let us know what you want to see, let us know what you want to learn about, and we'll make sure to put it on the schedule. But if there is nothing else here, then I definitely would recommend implementing Vault, even if it's in your own environment. If you want to test it out, if you want to take a look at it, look at the benefits that you get from it. I definitely think they outweigh the work that it takes to implement it. A lot of the times when you have new tools or you introduce new tools to an environment, it takes a little convincing to get the users to work with it and see the benefits. A lot of the times if you're on the admin side and you're introducing it to a bunch of users, all they see is more work, more button clicks, more things they have to keep track of. Explaining the benefits to them, I have seen in the past be very beneficial. They learn to, or they learn why you're doing it. You're not doing it just to give them more work. You're doing them to benefit them, to benefit your workflow. Maybe they have to do less work, and they don't see it yet. But definitely something I would recommend all of our customers implement. And if you have any questions or you want to talk more about your specific deployment and how that might affect your workflow, please feel free to reach out and let us know. But for now, thank you so much for coming, and I'll talk to you guys soon.